Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Margaret Rose and welcome to my channel. This is my very first video on my channel, so this is going to be a little intro video. I'm going to tell you about myself, tell you what this channel is going to look like, and then I want to share with you some of my favorite books, just so you can get a feel of what this is going to look like. So without further ado, again, I'm Margaret. I want to share with you some of my favorite things. So first of all, of course, I love reading. Reading has always been something that I love to do. Obviously, as I'm starting this channel. Another thing is I love being outside. That's one of my favorite places to read, to be honest. As well as just things like hiking. I love ice skating. We set up an ice rink in our backyard in the winter. That's really fun. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I want to tell you a bit about my reading journey as well. I've always loved reading. It was never something that I had to begin. It was something that my family always valued reading. My older sisters were readers, so I automatically just became a reader. Definitely read a lot of classics, was introduced to that when I was young, but since then my reading journey has grown. I've read so many books. Like I said, I read classics. I also read popular books though, and I'll get into that a little bit later because I want to tell you basically just an overview of what this channel will look like. I'll be reviewing books a lot. That's basically why I'm doing this, is because I read so many books and I want to be able to talk about them, because I always feel the need to after reading a book, as well as share them, because if I'm reading this many books, maybe people would want to learn about them. Also, another thing I forgot to tell you that I love, coffee. I could drink it hot or cold. Right now, I've been drinking a lot of iced coffee just because I know that the chilly weather is going to come and I might not like that as much. So trying to get this in as much as I can. So there's that. But then again, back to what you'll be seeing here. I like to read clean books. It's definitely what I'm looking for in books. So I'll be reviewing all different types of books, all different genres. I am open to anything. Again, like I said, my favorite thing to read is probably classics, but it always depends on my mood. So I read a lot of popular, contemporary, modern reads, but those can always be a bit iffy because they haven't been around for so long as classics have, or they haven't had as much time to be so highly acclaimed. They haven't withstood the test of time quite yet. So you never know if it's going to be that great or not, if it's going to be written well, if the characters are going to be good. Maybe the plot's going to be great, but it has to be written well for me. But yes, you'll definitely be seeing me reading a lot of those. I love reading fast-paced new books as well. I also, to spice things up, I'm going to have some reading vlogs, some book reading challenges to make it very fun for both me as well as for you to watch. I think that's all I wanted to tell you. Now I think I will move on to reviewing some of my favorite books. I want to show you some of my favorite books. So, before we begin, I wanted just to tell you that, yes, a lot of these are going to be classics. But again, like I said, that is just because they are so good. They're so good that they have withstood the test of time. So obviously, they're going to be pretty great. So, just off the bat, I just want to tell you that. But I do have some books in here that aren't classics that I want to tell you about. Another thing is that these aren't in any order or anything. These are some of my favorite books. Some of my favorite books are not on this list. It's not like they didn't make the cut. I like them almost just as much as these books, maybe even just as much. It's just I didn't want to be going on and on for this first little video, so I had to pick and choose. I'll tell you about those other ones some other time, but for now we've got these. So Again, no order to these. I will show you which ones I consider my favorite books. At a certain point, I'll let you know. But right now, we're just going to get started. So, this is The Ballad of the White Horse by G.K. Chesterton. Like it says in the title, this is a ballad. So it's written in verse. It follows a king, King Alfred, and he has just lost his land to the barbarians. It follows him just rallying up different men, trying to find allies. And then there's a great battle in the end, which was really neat to read. It reminded me a lot of the Song of Roland when I read that. If you like that, you'll certainly like this. But I must say it was less of the plot that I enjoyed and more of the beauty of it. Again, it's written in verse. I've never really read that type of thing before. Never been super into that type of thing before, but this truly got me into it. I read this for school, so sorry. I read this for school, so that really helped me to find more value in it. Some people say that their reading it for school ruins it for them because it's become something that they're forced to do instead of something that they might enjoy. But for me, usually, if it's done well, it makes me appreciate the book all the more. So, I've got this beautiful copy here. I'm trying to find, I wanted to show you a passage. So here, it's got this copy has beautiful illustrations. I wanted to read to you this little bit here. As you might know, G.K. Chesterton was a very influential Christian writer. And so he definitely has a lot of Christian themes in this. And it follows, obviously, King Alfred. And he is in the middle of the forest. He's dressed as a peasant. He, both to hide his identity as well as to, like, make sure that people just treat him like an ordinary fella. Here he's come upon a little hut in the middle of nowhere. There's a woman who lives there, and he's just so admired by the way that she served him, even though she did not realize that he was the king. And so after that, he started reflecting on the beauty of servitude, and he even started comparing her to God himself, how he is a servant to each one of us. I mean, you can see that in the Bible so many times. One example is the Last Supper, when he washed his apostles' feet, and he is the silent servant. Basically, what he's reflecting on is how much he cares for us. He's created us, he's molded us into these beautiful people who we are, and has created this world for us to fit us perfectly, specifically for us. And here, I'll read to you a little bit of my annotations. You can see I obviously annotated a lot. I love this. I said, God is not some king that stands aloof and far from the rest. Instead, he created his people lovingly and cares for each one of them, even nature. So even the small things. He's not obviously here, present. He's not sitting in this room telling me what to do. I mean, obviously he's always present everywhere, but he's not visually there. Obviously, if he was, nobody could deny that there is a God. But instead, he leaves that up to us to find him. And he's created for us this beautiful world. He cares for us so much. And so, anyway, I wanted to read this little passage to you. Just a little smidget of it. It goes on, but I'll share this little bit with you. It says, "And well may God with his serving folk cast in his dreadful lot. Is not he too a servant, and is not he forgot? For was not God my gardener, and silent like a slave, that opened oaks on the uplands, or thicket in the graveyard gave? And was not God my armourer, all patient and unpaid, that sealed my skull as a helmet, and ribs for hauberks made? Did not a great grey servant of all my sires and me build the pavilion of the pines, and herd the fowls, and fill the vines, and labour and pass, and leave no signs, save mercy and mystery? Yeah, beautiful. So I love how you could just dissect each stanza, each line. It really made me greatly appreciate poetry. Yeah, it's a beautiful read. Highly recommend. Next, I've got a more simple read. I've got Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Of course, this is complex in its own ways. This dives deep into the story of a little boy named Augie. He was born with some facial differences. He says that whatever you're imagining, it's worse than that. Yes, so all of his life he's been very self-conscious of how he looks. He's been homeschooled his whole life, but that's not just because he's afraid of how he looks and what people will think of him, but it is also because he's had so many surgeries. Since his birth, his life was threatened just because of his health. He's gone through so many battles, and finally he's going into middle school, and his parents think that he should go to a physical school just like the rest of the kids so that he can finally find some independence, be a normal kid. And that's all he wants. He talks from the very beginning how he just wants to be normal, and he is normal. Like, when you see what he does every day, he really is just a normal kid. It is only his face that looks different, and sadly people judge him because of that, act differently around him because of that. So it goes through his struggles in middle school. Obviously middle school is not always the best place because these kids don't have much experience with anything at that point, and they're in the middle of discovering themselves, and they're not sure what to do with themselves. So of course he was bullied. He made friends, but then he ended up being betrayed by some friends, and yeah, so it goes through all of his struggles. I'm not going to tell you how it ends, although you might be able to guess. You might have even read this. Obviously this is a very popular book, but this is certainly a very good read. I read it 3 times. It was that good. This is the only book. I'm not much of a rereader at all, even if it is one of my favorite books. Like, for instance, I have not read this book, as well as most of the other books that I'll be showing you. I haven't read them again, even though they're my favorite. But this I've read 3 times. It is truly phenomenal. I liked this because it was very realistic. I was able to connect very well with the characters. It wasn't something like when you're reading some children's fiction, middle grade fiction, you're kind of able to tell that the author didn't really know what they were talking about when it came to children's thoughts and such. But reading this as a 7th grader, I was able to tell that they were a child, not just because, or that they were like my age, not just because they told me, but because of the thought process of these children. All of their little instances, I mean, come on, it takes place in middle school. She's got that down pat, the middle school life. It is very neat. Even though I didn't go to a public middle school, I was able to absolutely relate, and not just relate with what Augie goes through, but also this follows multiple people's perspectives, his friends, his family. It is so neat to see them, not just how their perspective of knowing Augie, but also their own personal struggles that have nothing to do with him, yet he still touches their lives, and they're able to greatly admire him because of what he does. He's obviously very self-conscious of his face. He knows that so many people don't like his face, and yet he's able to be so strong. He goes through it anyway, and it is truly admirable. So it's so neat to see how he touches each person's lives, and as well as, yes, so like you can see the struggles of each person that are different, and you're able to relate with them as well somehow. Sorry, somehow my connection must have been very poor. Done with that for now. Next, we've got The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I also read this in school, so that was very neat. experience as well. I was definitely able to dive deeper into it than I might have if I read it on my own. This here follows Hester Prynne. This takes place a long time ago, early America. I think, yes, it does take place in America. And it's in a Puritan village. And she becomes pregnant, and of course the town notices. And so she's on trial, and yet nobody knows who her partner was, and because she's not married. Sorry, I forgot to mention that point. She's pregnant and she's not married. So this, of course, was such a huge deal. And so she's set on trial, but of course they don't know who did it, and she refuses to admit it. She's allowing the other person to admit it for themselves. She's letting them figure it out for themselves. They do not know how to correctly give her sentence. They end up, I can't remember if there was more to it, but I think she had to move a little bit further away from everybody else, or at least that's what she did, because she just didn't want to have to deal with all these people. And she had to wear an A on her chest. You might understand what that A stands for. And that's what this is named after. It's the Scarlet Letter. She had to wear a red. She had to create it herself too, which was also a little bit demeaning. But the impressive thing is that she made it beautiful. It was this beautiful red cloth that she used, and she did this gold A that was embroidered very beautifully, and she didn't cover it up. Of course, she wasn't allowed to cover it up, but she didn't even try or have only a small bit of it showing. She displayed it, not because she was proud of what she had done. She wasn't. She was sorry for what she did. She knew what she did was wrong, but what she was really standing up against was how they were treating her. And she knew that it wasn't fair, especially since she knew what she did wrong and she was truly sorry. Yet she still has to live her entire life like this. And since then, nobody treats her well ever again. And this, what I liked about this book was that it made me understand even more how much I value character development in books. It was so incredible to see the struggles that she was going through, and as well as it followed multiple people. So you got to see Dimmesdale, who is the town minister, this town pastor, who was her partner, and he is going through a lot as well. He doesn't want to tell anybody because obviously that would be bad for him. But again, he still cares for Hester, and he knows that he did wrong. He is sorry for it as well. But he doesn't know what to do. He wants to support her, but if he did, people might suspect him or they might cut him out as well. And so instead he accuses her. But you can see what that is doing to his soul. He is going through so much inner turmoil. And there's this one character named Chillingsworth who soon finds out that it was him, but he doesn't tell anybody simply because he wants to manipulate him to make him even more miserable. And he does this to both Hester and him. Such a heart-wrenching story. It truly is. And I wanted to show you this cover here too. I love it when covers give you a scene, like an exact scene, movement for movement, of a scene in the book. And so this is one of them. You have Hester over here and her child, Pearl, who did end up becoming born. So this follows years. And you get to see her grow up and the hate that they have for this child, even though she had nothing to do with it. And over here is Dimmesdale. He hasn't told anybody that it was him. And here she is protecting her child because she's willing to take on everything. She's willing to take on the suffering that they are giving her, they're forcing her to go through, but she won't let her child. And so she's always defending her, and yet she's trying to get to his heart, but she still will not tell anybody that it was him. She's leaving that up to him, which was so crazy. So many virtues displayed in this book. So much you can learn from this. The character development is incredible. Another great book. Next, I've got Little Woman by Louisa May Alcott. This book I do not have a physical copy of, sadly. But this book, you likely know what this is about. This is definitely one of the largest classics out there. But this follows, so I'm not going to get too much into detail, but this follows a little family. There's 4 girls. Follows them growing up, finding themselves, learning about the world around them, and just loving one another. It is truly beautiful. Such a sweet little tale. I must say, I don't like necessarily how it ends. I can tell you more about that later. But, so many ways it went wrong in the end. But it's still understandable what happened, and I totally admire the author. It is incredible what she did. And again, great characters, great story. That's all I'm going to say about it. Next, I've got a nonfiction, an autobiography, actually. This is Left to Tell by Immaculee Ilbagiza. So this follows her while she lived in Rwanda. It follows her from when she's a little girl to when she grows up into a young lady. And so because it starts from when she's a little girl, you kind of get a taste of what her life looked like before the Holocaust. And so you get to see how she's friends with the Hutus, which is the other tribe that ends up becoming discriminatory towards them, and she is part of the Tutsis. And so they live in peace as far as she can tell in her own little world as a child. But then she grows up and she starts to notice some things that are off. She starts, some of her closest friends betray her, and then killing in the streets begins, and it just goes downward, and it is absolutely gruesome. Very detailed, so don't read if you think that you would be triggered in that way, because terrible, terrible things happen. He ends up finding refuge in a man's house. He is a Protestant minister. He is part of the Hutus, but he knows better than to treat anybody that way. And so he has this little room in his house. It's a little bathroom, a little hidden room that he hides behind, I think, a wardrobe. And you honestly cannot tell that it is there. And so he hides a bunch of women there so that they can be safe for months. I think it was almost a year, or at least half a year. They were crammed in that little bathroom, and there were so many women in it, so it was hard for them to even move. They were just stuck in one position. It was horrible, but it was truly a grace, a miracle that they were able to survive, because so many people did not. And yes, you can see the little miracles, nothing incredible that is totally out there, but just them counting their blessings was so neat. And as well as once she escaped eventually, how she was able to forgive them, and she even went back to Rwanda and forgave them, and it was truly amazing. And a huge theme of it was definitely the forgiveness, as well as talking about how history repeats itself, even though we obviously don't want it to. She said that after the Nazis in Germany, everyone was like, never again. But still, it happened again. There was a whole other genocide. Even though everybody was totally against it, yet it happened again. And I literally ended up writing an essay on my own about it. Maybe I'll share it with you at some point. I don't know, but it wasn't for school or anything. I didn't read this book for school. I just read it on my own. My grandparents recommended it one time to me, and they were like, but make sure you look up the trigger warnings, because there's a lot in there. But I read it. It was really good. I kind of wanted to share that with you. Yes, it is one of my favorite books, but it is also a nonfiction. So I want you to know that I'll be covering nonfiction as well. So we're getting to the last few. The next one is one of my very favorite books. This one is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I usually tell people that this is my favorite just because it really influenced me a lot. I don't know if it is my favorite, but it certainly is one of my very favorites. Okay, so this is about a girl named Jane. She's an orphan. It starts from her childhood. It goes until she grows up into a young woman. Now, I don't want you to think that this is just a cutesy little story. It held me. It was like, it had me in chokehold the whole time. I needed to know what was next. It had mystery, romance. It had some gothic elements. It was truly incredible. Very fascinating. Yes, like I said, I had to know what happened next. It wasn't a very slow read at all. And the character growth was incredible. So, anyway, let me get back to the plot. It follows her whole life, but then she grows up and she is hired as a governess at this manor. And there's this little child who lives there, but her parents are gone, and so the owner of this manor is just some random person who took her in, and he's very mysterious, and he instantly spikes her curiosity, and they eventually fall in love, and there's a little romance there. She soon finds out that he might not be all he seems to be. There's something very mysterious about him, as well as his property. I can't remember. You know how, like, they always had their names, like in Jane Austen? But I wish I could remember what it was called, but I can't at the moment. Either way, there's something very off, and she has to make some very hard decisions, and she definitely faces a lot of discrimination, abuse. She has to really figure out what she wants, as well as what would be best for those around her, including the ones who hate her or hurt her. She was just so incredibly understanding. She wasn't one to hate back, even when she was being faced with so much. And that was truly what really made me love this book, was just the virtues that she displayed, the understanding, as well as her strength. How she was able to go through all of that and still be strong, such a strong woman. So, very good book. Like I said, probably my favorite. Alright, now we're at the tail's end. I've got a series here for you. This is what really got me into my huge reading craze. I've got Keeper of the Lassities. You may or may not know what this is. This here is a middle grade fantasy series. These are not all the books. These are just a few of them, 5 of them. Yeah, 5 of them. And there's probably like 10, although she is writing more still. So there will be more. They're huge, thick books, very long series. That's what I love. I love it when you can just read on and on. The plot gets heavier and it's so good. So this follows a girl named Sophie Foster. She has always had all of these weird traits, and she knows that she is not normal. She does not feel like she belongs, even though she loves her family. She does not even feel like she belongs in her family. She looks different, for one thing. And for another thing, she can read minds, as well as she's very smart. She's a senior in high school, even though she's 12 years old. And yeah, she knows something is up, but she just thinks that she's just weird. But then one day, somebody finds her and tells her, hey, you don't belong here. You actually belong in the Lost Cities. I think that's what they're called, which is basically where all other mythical creatures live. She's an elf. And so she's taken back there. She finally feels like she belongs. Of course, she misses her family so much because they were her family and they loved her. The first book is so good. It really isn't much of a plot. It's really just you getting to know the world, getting to know the characters, how the magic system works. Though technically there is no magic, like everything is based on science, according to them. It was very good for me because I don't necessarily always like very dense fantasy. It can be sometimes hard for me to follow along, but just because it's so unrelatable. It takes place on Earth, and she is obviously lived like a normal human being at one point. I loved the characters. Another reason why I love long series is because you can get to know the characters very well. And these characters were so real. It's weird for me to think that they're not real. Honestly, I can't. So, for those of you who have read this series, I'm going to show you my 2 favorite books from the series. I'm sorry. I just realized I put them in the wrong order when I just showed you them to you. But I'm going to show you my favorite books. So this is one of them. I can't decide between 2 of them, but this is one of them. This is Exile. This is the second book. I really like this book because it really opened up what you were going to see for the rest of the series. You got to know the characters even better. I'm sorry I'm so redundant about the characters, but that is literally so important to me. You get to know the characters better. You get to see... I'm sorry, I'm so redundant, but you get to see their struggles even... And, you know, it's not just surface level anymore. And then you also get to see some more action, and as well as she learns more about her purpose, because she finds out that she is not even a normal elf. She still has so many special qualities about her. I know this sounds very typical. I mean, we've seen this in, for example, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson. You know, somebody finds out, oh, I'm special. I have special powers. This storyline is really, really good. I read Percy Jackson. I honestly think that this is even better. I've heard that, I mean, the same people who like Percy Jackson like Harry Potter, but also I've recommended this to adults and they love it. It's truly very good. But anyway, I love this cover here. This is my favorite cover in the series. It's very pretty. It's very Lord of the Rings-esque. The other books in the series, practically all the other books, are action-packed. Like, the cover is an action picture. It's almost as if you're watching something and then you pause it in the middle of it, and it's like a weird pose, and they look very odd. It's like that. I don't honestly like that very much, but this was beautiful. So you know how I was talking about with the Scarlet letter, the cover was an exact scene in the book. That's what it's like with Keeper of the Lost Cities. You can tell, like, movement for movement, gesture for gesture, like even facial expressions, everything. The scene, the background is exactly a scene in the book, which I love so much. I like general covers don't always get me very well, unless like they're absolutely stunning or something. Anyway, this is my other favorite book. This is Neversea. This is the 4th book in the series. The ending, guys, is insane. I cried. Yes, this is definitely, I think it is my favorite in the series. I cried at the end. It left me on a cliffhanger. I literally threw the book. I was on the upper bunk. I threw the book down on the ground and was not myself for a couple days because I was in grief. And I had that was before I owned the series, so I had to like wait for the next book to come. I had to place it on hold. It wasn't at my library. I had to wait. Terrible stuff. So, yeah, keep your Lost Cities, everyone. And that is all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got some good recommendations. I hope that this really gave you a good idea of what I'm going to be showing you guys. If you have any suggestions for me, or have any books that you want me to try, let me know. I would love to have your recommendations of books. would love to have all those bookish conversations in the comments. So comment, subscribe, like, share. If I'm going to be doing this, I need to know that people are liking it. So please share so I can get more views, and like so I know that you like it. So stay tuned, and I'll see you later. Bye.